Yo, it's your man with the plan, Marcel Lars here to talk about Fire Emblem Three Houses. And just to start off, for those who don't know, I have been a Fire Emblem fan pretty much since it's been in the West, since it joined Smash Brothers. And because of that, I have a high respect for the Fire Emblem franchise. And when I played Fire Emblem Three Houses, I loved it. I loved the experience. And there was many things in the game that I really respected the creators and how they kind of challenged it and how they kind of went about the way they programmed the game and how they designed the story that I believe a lot of RPGs don't do now. And I believe that not only will this be a new standard for Fire Emblem in general, but also for RPGs as a whole. And I'm really, really excited to talk about some of the points I actually want to, what I loved about the game. And I believe that now when I play other RPGs and games in general, I think about if I see, they need to do what Fire Emblem Three Houses did, or, what Persona 5 did. Because that's the only other game I use as an RPG, there's a level between normal, good king tier and god tier, and Persona 5 and Fire Emblem Three Houses are god tier RPGs to me. But I do want to start talking about some of the things that I really, really like, what really impressed me about the game. And the first little short point I want to talk about is how the social simulator worked in Fire Emblem Three Houses and how the relationship mechanics worked. I've never seen any relationship mechanic that was as complex as the one in Fire Emblem Three Houses. Close second is Persona 5, but even then it was not as, impactful as the one in Fire Emblem Three Houses was. I just like to talk about how the character's dialogue will change depending on what you've done before the support, and that was the most impressive thing ever. I think there was one support where I can't remember. Don't quote me on this, but I think there was Mercedes was talking to Sylvain about Crest and their support, and then when you get level B support on their support, I think when she talks to another character. I can't really remember who. And she talks about and I talked about Sylvain about how this crests make me feel like this and this, and he was really upset about it. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't talk to Sylvain. If I didn't do Sylvain supports before that conversation. And there's a lot of interchangeable dialogue. There's lots of hidden dialogue throughout this game. It's one of those games. There's literally a cutscene that you can. There's tons of cutscenes you can miss in the main story if you don't do supports. There's tons of little dialogue options that will change depending on what your relationship with somebody is, and it's all really fascinating. It's all fascinating, and it always brings something new to the conversation, and it's fun. And I've never seen a game company take the time to implement the dialogue, the social simulator, so hard into their main story. Literally, if I got a support up with Dimitri, I'm not saying this doesn't exist, keep in mind, I'm just making an example. You have support with Dimitri and you do support fast enough, he will literally like you more in the main story. That's literally what it is. People's characters' dialogue and emotions change depending on what you do with your free time and your dialogue choices, and that's amazing. Because that was my main problem with Persona 5, was that you can literally date a character in Persona 5 and they'll act like they're never your boyfriend and girlfriend, even in romantic situations. But in Fire Emblem Three Houses, that's not the case. Alright. The second thing I want to talk about is the full voice acting. This game is one of the first games that's as long as it is and has so many options as it is that it has full voice acting. I've never seen a 50-hour plus game have voice acting on everything. An RPG that has dialogue like a freaking 3 Harry Potter books length worth of dialogue. And I've never seen it all voice acted. I think only thing that's not voice acted is Byleth and maybe 1 or 2 NPCs at some point. I think everybody else is all of them are voice acted. And not only are they voice acted, like, they have some of, like, the best voice actors. Like, the best voice actors. Known and unknown. Like, I've never... It's not... I don't even think there's a dud in any of the characters, English-wise. Especially English-wise. I'm talking about English-wise. I didn't play Japanese, because... even though I'm good at telling good voice actors in Japanese, that would have just been too hard for me to actually comment on. And just so many voice actors that were amazing. Like the standouts were Dimitri, Claude, like the main lords voice actors were like the freaking best. Rhea, Yuri's voice actor. All of them. I love Yuri's. I love all of them. All those people are actually my favorite voice actors even before playing this game. So that just gives me more excitement just talking about them. But I think the closest game that has voice acting to this has to be either Persona franchise and the Final Fantasy franchise. I don't think many games have anime voice acting on the same level as these two games. And that, to me, that's very impressive. And I believe that a lot of other companies need to... Maybe if they can't get the voice actors they want, that's really hard sometimes. But they do need to do that full voice acting thing more if they have the budget to. It's totally worth it, especially if they have a good story. And this how, like I said earlier, the hidden voice lines and stuff, and how impressive that was. I can't praise that enough. And the next point I want to talk about after that is like how balanced the characters are in this game. So in this game, there's a beautiful balance between the realistic part of their character, like the part that makes you feel for them, and the goofy, entertaining part that makes you entertained, like the anime / funny, goofy stuff. Like, there's a nice balance between the two. Some characters are a little bit one way or the other, and you could tell, but overall, amazing. Like, they actually felt, for the most part, most of them felt like real people. And, which is really rare for anime characters, keep in mind, or video game characters based off of Japanese animation. Very, very, most likely they either make them, like, completely just, like, gritty and, like, realistic, which is kind of boring sometimes, or they make them just, like, completely goofy, anime tatas everywhere, can barely, trust everybody just because, and, that stuff is cool and all, but it was refreshing to see a really entertaining balance between the real and the unreal in the characters, or the real and the goofy, I like to say, not the unreal, because their characters were pretty realistic when it came to the goofy, for the most of them. So that's one thing I did like. The next thing I want to talk about is how it handles violence in the story. For many who don't know, and this is a media in general, they often, very, very often, either glorify violence or they just go over the top talking about how ugly it is. And this game is really good at, like, showing the benefits, the cons, the pros and cons of being violent at the same time. Like, especially with the Blue Lions, it shows, like, you're like, in order to protect somebody, you gotta hurt somebody, and that person probably has somebody who cares about them, even if they're a scumbag, or they hurting the person that you're trying to protect. And so basically any type of violence is going to hurt somebody somewhere. Like, a lot of messages like that, and it was really impressive to see, like, to hear those messages. And it's really rare for media to do that, because normally in most games or TV shows, they normally just, like, when there's violence, normally it's like, I'm justified to hurt this person, I'm justified to kill this person, I'm justified to attack this person, like, they deserved it. In this game, it's like, the message is like, yeah, they might deserve it, but am I really doing anything different than they were doing in the end of the day? But it's just that the reason behind it is maybe a little bit better. And I love that. I love that message. And just like, you, in all the past, it's maybe Golden Deer is a little bit different, but for all the past, you don't really know if you're doing the right thing sometimes. Like, should I really be killing these people? They're just kind of trying to defend this person. Which, in the paralogs, which are the side stories in the game, if you guys, for those who haven't played the game or don't really remember, the paralogs are the best at showing these. Like, honestly, I think the paralogs were what made the story amazing, right? Other than the supports. Because the paralogs are what give you all the backstory, and it shows you all the ugly side of war, and it was really cool. Just like to talk a little bit more about some of the other things I liked, I think that a lot of the customization and a lot of the different things that change the dialogue and all the different like surprises and like hidden stuff. I believe that a lot of games that people play now are kind of missing that. It used to be a big thing back in the day for especially those who are older than probably when this video's coming out, probably older than 18. Like all of us adults remember what video games were like back in the day, where there were so many secrets and so many cool little knickknacks and so much little effort put into things that you may or may not see in the game, that you might pick up the game later and see later, that they don't do now in new games. And when I see it, I can't help to be impressed, because it's that level of polish that games these days don't have. But I think that's pretty much everything I want to say about how I think Fire Emblem Three Houses has changed the game of RPGs, and how other people who are developing RPGs right now and other game companies with a high budget, how they can basically improve their product tenfold, honestly. And this lets you guys know that I know there's a lot of things about the story, and the story sometimes isn't the most engaging, like the main story. But I believe, if you know anything about Fire Emblem, normally every game has a not a part 2, but it has another game that's set in the same universe that kind of expands a little bit on the past game while still completely doing something new. Like how Awakening is connected to Marth's story, and there's Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance. Like normally they do 2 or 3 games in the same continent, same universe. So I know there was a lot of stuff that wasn't answered in Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I'm a little disappointed about. But I believe that they probably are going to do another game set in Fotland, and it's probably going to expand upon a little. It probably isn't going to focus on Three Houses stuff exactly, but it's probably going to expand upon it a little bit, because it normally has a little bit of that element of the past game in it when they do a game set later, or another game set in the same universe. But I don't want to talk you guys' ear off. I really appreciate you guys like and or dislike this video. If you don't like any of the comments I made or anything, do that. And please leave me down a comment of what you guys liked about Fire Emblem Three Houses, or what you expect RPGs and a lot of games in general that have similar styles or anime style. What do you expect them to take away from Fire Emblem Three Houses and Persona, or any game that has major mechanics that are really have impressed you, down below. And I love you guys. Take care of yourselves and have yourselves a damn good one. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye.